Today we're making the hottest dice in town, and by hot I mean spicy, because I have got some of the hottest peppers in the world inside of these nice dice. I'm talking so hot and so much spice that if you touched it with your tongue, you'd have to put your tongue on ice level of spice dice. An incredibly kind viewer named Brian Stearns sent me 3 of his homegrown varieties of 3 of the hottest peppers in the world, and they are gnarly, but they are also incredibly beautiful looking, so they had to go in some dice. They also warned me to wear gloves and a mask whenever I'm working with this, because if it gets on your skin and you go to the bathroom, it may be the last time you ever want to go to the bathroom again. They sent me 3 varieties of peppers: the Carolina Reaper, the Death Spiral pepper, and the Genghis Khan pepper. They sent a really nice heartfelt letter as well as the Scoville heat unit so that I can know the Carolina Reaper is pretty much right up at the top there. I'm a big fan of spicy foods, and so I'll definitely put that in some chili, but for now, let's put it inside of some dice. I'm going to be using the shell dice molds we've used in the past few videos that don't have any numbers on the inside, and there's a reason for that, but we'll get back to that in a minute. For now, let's start mixing up our resin. I'm going to be using Envirotex Light Resin, which is a 1:1 by volume mixture resin. You have to mix that up for about 5 minutes or until you have no more streaks inside of the resin. Normally, this process introduces some bubbles into the resin, but not nearly as much as the peppers will introduce, and I'll show you why here in a minute. These peppers are absolutely gorgeous, but up close, they kind of look like a hot Cheeto from hell. I would not want to get my tongue anywhere near this without something else. Just eating it plain sounds like an absolute nightmare. At first, I cut them up with scissors because I thought I needed to, but they're so dry they kind of crumble in your hands, which is actually perfect for putting it inside of the resin. I wanted to run a test to see how this would work within the resin, and yep, they float. That's a problem. There's a couple solutions to this. Originally, I just wanted 1 piece or 2 inside each die so that you could see all of the details on it, but I decided to go with the foolproof method, which is to just jam-pack the resin with way more pieces of chili pepper. Now, you see, I mean way more pieces of chili pepper. This will obviously introduce a ton of air, but the peppers themselves, while being mixed, might introduce air just because they're so craggly. Bubbles will want to stick to their surface and not float up, so you'll have to deal with that in some way. You can see here I absolutely loaded this resin to the brim with pieces of chili pepper and started just putting it into the mold. Now, you might be thinking, just doing it like that, you're going to introduce a ton of gaps and voids into your dice. Well, that's not really a problem because we're using the shell mold. I told you there was a reason for that. The shell mold is basically just going to act like a little insert for us. I honestly don't care if there's any voids. Having voids in there would be cool because that will mean once we put it in the second mold, there will be little blank areas where there's no chili peppers and it will give it some visual contrast. So I just stuff them down into the molds. I fill it up with any excess resin, but really it's mostly just about getting the peppers in the right shape inside these blank molds that will go inside of the outside shell molds. So I pour excess resin onto the top, both on the bottom half of the mold and the top half, and the rest of the peppers I pour in an empty and clean cup because I have a little side project I want to make happen with these peppers. So we'll come back to that later as well. Popping any surface bubbles, it seems kind of pointless to do so. I know I'm going to get gaps and voids in these. There's just too many bubbles hidden underneath the crags of the chili peppers. So it's going to happen, but we're anticipating that and actually wanting to use that as a feature in these dice rather than a defect. I'm going to place them in my pressure pot at 40 psi. I leave them in there for only 12 hours, letting them be a little bit softer. I find that this is a really good way of blending one resin to another without having lines be shown. So after 12 hours, the resin's still a little bit soft when I take them out of the mold. And you can see, there's a problem. If these were regular dice, we'd be screwed and we'd have to start over. There's huge gaps and lots of voids in the top of these, but again, not a problem. We actually want that and we're anticipating that. Other than that though, they came out really gorgeous looking, but because they're a little soft, they're not quite as shiny on the side. Again, we're going to fix that here with the outer shell mold. It's going to fix a lot of things, like there's a huge ridge on the top of this D20. Again, you won't see that as soon as we put more resin in. So let's go ahead and mix up that other resin and stop talking about it. After we mix up our second batch of resin, it's time to place all of these inside of the outside molds. Luckily, again, these numbers kind of help center all of the inserts that we're going to put inside, and so it will really feel like it's just floating coating in the very center of the dice. I fill up the molds about 2/3 of the way with our resin mixture and then just place the inserts inside. I make sure that the kind of craggly bits on any dice that had problems are facing upwards. That way resin can kind of fall down inwards and doesn't have a chance of leaving even larger air bubbles in the sides. That was really only on the D6 and one of the D10s that I had, so I didn't have to worry too much about it. Other than that, it's just like working with any other shell mold, which I have a ton of videos about, by the way, if you want to see how those are done. I pour any excess resin I had down into that cup because we're going to try and make a cool little paperweight out of this, or a display stand for these dice instead of a dice box. These are going to go into the pressure pot. I left them in there for 72 hours to make sure they were super duper hard, and man, are they super duper pretty when you take them out of there. They are absolutely gorgeous. The color difference between the first pour of resin and the second is so minorly different, you can't hardly see the line where the original insert was at all, especially when it's zoomed out, and I'll show you that more later. All of the seeds inside look gorgeous. The D4 might actually be my favorite because it has the least amount of chili pepper in it, and so you can see all of the details in it. Otherwise, most of them look almost like fire because there's so much red, orange, and yellow. I'm actually going to show you with the paperweight that we made here up close what it looks like if you don't use a pressure pot. Unfortunately, the paperweight didn't really pan out. The bottom of the cup kind of stuck to the resin, and so, oh well, it's not going to be a great paperweight, but it will be a cool visual for you all to see what these would look like if you didn't use a pressure pot. The amount of bubbles that get stuck into all of those crags is amazing, and it's a testament to why we use the pressure pot in the first place. Also, it makes a really fun Where's Waldo game with the D6. Did you know it was sitting on top of the little paperweight? Bet you didn't. It feels almost like an optical illusion because I can move the D6 around, and then after I stop moving it and move my hands away, I completely forget that it's there and it's just disappeared. But we're going to ruin that illusion by inking up the numbers. I'm going to use Vallejo's Sun Yellow color. Also, I'm a huge Dumbo and accidentally mixed up the record and stop recording button on my camera, so you don't see me actually painting it so that I can show you how I do it, instead just wiping the paint off of the 6. Oh well, I guess I'm not that good with my camera. It's not a skill that I share with other YouTubers. Did some big idiot who messed up his camera say Skillshare? Woo! I'm good at transitions and bad with cameras. Thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. Still waiting on that call to start a transitions class, but if you haven't heard about Skillshare, they're an online learning community with thousands of inspiring classes so you can invest in yourself, work on your own personal growth, learn some new things, and it's all ad-free. I joined Skillshare because I really enjoy learning new things and trying out those new things with my wife so that we have things to do. Like if we wanted to learn how to grow our own chili peppers that are really hot for some reason, maybe we could take up gardening. Skillshare's got classes on that. I always find that my day-to-day is just filled with endless to-dos, and so it's relaxing to learn something new and watch somebody who's really good at it show you how to do those things. For example, this class by Ekta Chowdhury on indoor gardening, she's so calm and so precise in how she explains things. We're going to try and make our own tomatoes and microgreens at home because she makes it sound so easy. All in all, it's a great service, so why don't we help each other out? Because the first 1,000 people to use my link in the description below will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. Thank you again to Skillshare, but let's get back to the dice, which is what you came here for, and man, did you come for some beautiful dice. The yellow inking on these makes them look like pure fire, and I'm absolutely here for it. Some of the inking actually bubbled up, but instead of doing a second coat to fix that, I'm not going to. It almost looks radioactive, which I think is theme appropriate for these super duper spicy dice. Remember how I said that insert, the line between it and the resin on the outside is very hard to see when you zoom out? Well, here's your proof. I can't tell it's there, and the only reason I really could tell in the first place was because I was using a 4K camera and super zoomed in. Even if you put it up next to your eye, you can hardly see that at all, and so it just looks like chili peppers are suspended right in the very center of all of these dice, and I think it's absolutely gorgeous. The fire look is awesome. I could have inked it in black, but I think the yellow is just more thematically appropriate. Thanks again to Dicey Encounters for letting me use his shell molds continuously. This kind of Where's Waldo trick doesn't work as well when there's actual painting on the numbers, but man, am I happy with how this set looks. It's just gorgeous. And you know we got to roll them on the table to see if they sound as good as they look. I did get a natural 1 on the D20 whenever I was testing the rolls though, so that's not good. But then I immediately got a D20 on the very next roll, so maybe the luck cancels each other out? I don't know. Okay, so I couldn't just leave the D20 without knowing if it was lucky or unlucky, so I rolled until I got either a nat 20 or a nat 1, and okay, I happened to get another nat 1. So these dice don't like me, but that's probably because when does a chili pepper ever like you? It's always mean to you, it always causes problems, and so why should that be any different inside of dice? Huge thanks again to Brian Stearns for sending me over these peppers and sending me enough to where I can make some chili out of them. I'm sure I won't thank you after I do make that chili, though. And for those of you wondering, I would absolutely send these dice to Brian, but in their letter they said they were already getting a set commissioned out of them. And so I'm probably going to keep these because I really like how they turned out. However, Brian, if you just say, man, those look so dang good, they're yours, just let me know, man. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe if you might want some more spicy content like this. Like the video if you like it. Dislike it if you dislike it. I want to hear that too. Either way, I hope that you have a fantastic day.